From the twisted realm of science and the darkest pits of reason comes chilling tales of godlessness. Bear witness to the unfathomable terror that is the Good Atheist.
For those of you that don't know, Ryan has not been present for the past 4 radio shows. Well, I did 3 because I didn't do one of them.
I did not spontaneously turn into a flaming gay person. That was Jeff taking over for me, and a good job he did do, I must say. I always enjoy listening to the shows with Jeff, actually.
Jeff is fun. Yeah, I like doing shows with him. It sort of like throws everything, mixes things up. I mean, I know everybody would love if we could have more guests, and money willing, we would. We just detest the idea of doing anything over Skype and that kind of stuff. We would like to have people over to do shows.
Yeah, here's the whole thing with Skype. I tried to do a Skype show while I was away, and goddamn, I spent about 3 hours trying to cut out the 6 seconds delay that you have after finishing a sentence and waiting for the other people to hear what you said and then for them to respond.
Yeah, well, it's not even just that. It's also the fact that I think that people recognize the fact that The Good Atheist is a conversational podcast. We sit down, we have a conversation about different things. And having a conversation over Skype phone, I mean, the technology's not there enough.
Well,
ironically.
Let me tell you what, it's pretty fucking pathetic that we still to this day cannot have crystal clear...
I can stream movies, but apparently I can't have any programs that allows me to talk real time with someone.
Yeah, no latency. It's ridiculous. But, shit, now you made me forget what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, no, I lost it.
Because it doesn't matter. So, yeah, Ryan was on vacation, so you were in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Did you notice anything, out of the ordinary while you were there?
The only thing that I noticed was that the newspaper down there, the Chattanooga Free Times, I think it was called, is pretty Republican, and it's biased against Obama. Like, when that whole Iran thing was going on, this is the article they wrote on the front page. They said... a little snippet tucked in there was Obama talked to his advisors for 30 minutes and then went and played golf. And I got really pissed off because they basically were saying that he was struggling with how he was going to react. And anybody with half a brain can take a look at what he did. And he basically said, I'm not going to wade into Iran's business and pretend to know what I'm talking and basically cause a gigantic conflagration. But they basically twisted it to the idea of him struggling to know what to do and not spending any time on it. And then I
That's
realized,
some spin, boy.
But here's the thing. Then I realized that it wasn't even a Chattanooga Free Times writer. It was the Associated Press that wrote that.
Ooh, the Associated Press wrote that?
Yep.
Wow.
I know. So I was pretty peeved, and then I was just like, man, Associated Press. I've heard about Associated Press's bias, but this is the first time I've ever actually noticed it that palpable. I'm wondering if maybe they have stuff that they distribute to the more right wing and then stuff they kind of distribute to the more left wing. I don't know exactly how it works, but that was
they must because that wouldn't make sense.
Well, either that or my bet is that because there were some mistakes in there as well. There was a repeating bit in there, and I was like, there's no way it would have slipped past Associated Press. So I imagine editors for the regional areas can cut and add little bits, and it's fine. It's part of the Associated Press's thing that you can edit it for space or take this or add that. And
edited for bigotry,
edited for bias.
I like that. I think that if your newspaper is glaringly biased, you admit it. I have less of a problem with you because, well, everybody's going to make up their own mind anyways at the end of the day. So, I mean, I don't actually mind too much when individuals have a little bit of bias because, okay, it's expected. Mm-hmm. But you just stay out of my face. Stay out of my face.
Yeah, the only other thing past that was there were still a lot of people driving around with Bush Cheney bumper stickers, and I am just amazed at the gall of that.
Well, they're hard to remove.
But how anybody can still be proud of voting for those two people after basically what they've done over the past 8 years. I don't care if you're a Republican. Republicans should be ashamed too because they basically torpedoed the Republican Party, and the party is just insane now. Yeah, I feel bad.
Well, there's the side that's trying to get it back, And then there's the sides that just decided that the best way to go is to jump on the fundamentalist bandwagon and just ride that sucker home.
Yeah, this is where having a two-party system really sucks, because basically what Republicans are is being completely co-opted by a bunch of crazy people.
Adopt a multi-party system, people.
By fundamentalists and neoconservatives,
but
basically.
I don't even understand this. And this is kind of I don't know, it'll be on a bit of a tangent, but how can anyone in the United States of America think that a two-party system, two political opinions, let's say it boiled down to that, like everybody sort of, because at the end of the day, everyone's exerting so much pressure that you could say that one particular agenda is trying to be met by Republicans and another by Democrats. And that's just, you can plainly see that from voting records.
Yep.
But now to say that two positions is adequate, I'm like, are you insane? Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, like, you need multiple positions in order to have at least a moderating presence. Like, I just feel that it is insane that somehow everybody's like, well, two parties, it's the easy number to remember. Well, you're one or the other. You can't be in the middle. What are you, a Perodian, a Ross Perot? Indian? I don't know how they call
just independent, or the Green, or the Libertarians, and
jokes. They should all band together, merge together into the third party. Just to survive. Like if you were companies, all right, and you were in the operating system business, and you were competing against all these other individuals. Like it's just best to merge, because you got less than 1% of the market. Stop, like the margins are low, people. Try to find a way to band together.
Yeah, divide and conquer is a tried, tested, and true thing for a lot of reasons. And in politics, it's just... But all these different little groups, they just have some pretty out there things. And this is my problem with, say, the Libertarians. I imagine I'm going to piss off a lot of Libertarian listeners.
Let's do it.
But you need government. You really do. And the idea of privatizing prisons and air control and everything else is just the worst idea ever, because look at your privatized healthcare. And I'm not going to get into the whole idea of healthcare as far as how badly the American government would run it, but still the idea of privatized healthcare, we've talked about it a lot of time. When you put a price tag on somebody's life and on the care that they receive, then it just goes down a very evil path.
Well, you know what? Here's a perfect example. I mean, if you look at the beginning of sort of the capitalist system in the United States after the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. What you can see from corporations is that at the beginning it was the free hand of like the market, and I mean, like fire stations used to be private enterprises. If you did not pay them, and you didn't have like their little badge in your house, they wouldn't put out the fire. Now, you wouldn't go and say, well, the fire department is completely inefficient, we should privatize that. I'm like, are you insane? It was tried, and it failed miserably. Why? Because everybody... when you're in a large city, or any large groupings that we now are, people contribute and pay a type of insurance. We call them taxes, and these insurances can be used for other public services. I mean, if they come at a loss, it's no big deal, because that's what we pay for, and we accept that certain services should operate at a loss. Power should operate at a loss. Individuals, we should subsidize that largely through taxes, because people need power. And it shouldn't be one of those things that you can just yank at a chain and choke economies. When you do that, I'm like, what happened when they privatized electricity? Well, exactly what I just described to you. It just tells you that systems that are essential should not be privatized. So that's for you libertarians. And on the side note, if you really want to stick it to them, I mean, Ron Paul was a creationist, and that's your boy. That's your main boy, and he was a creationist. So, you know what? Not the smartest man.
You know what? I'll attack a man's ideas, but I'm not going to pretend that one bad idea begets all of the others.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, if he's your boy, I know that all fans of this podcast are huge evolution fans. So you may want to look at the fact that Ron Paul's a creationist. Not cool. Just not cool.
Yeah, I'd be less worried about basically the privatization of everything if we had any kind of track record at all to support the idea that companies wouldn't fuck over and rape individuals and everybody's rights.
Well, look, you know what happened during the economic crisis? One thing happened. Well, it was the nationalization of all American banks. That's what happened. American banks are now nationalized. They can use their influence, and they own a certain part of these banks. They can make these banks do whatever they want. And, to some degree, you brought that on yourself. All right? That's what happened when your greedy motherfuckers stole trillions of dollars from your economy. You had to step in and say, stop. Do you want to do that for everything? I mean, it's a harsh lesson.
Well, just look down in California. There was that prison bill that was basically set to save California a lot of money, and it was voted down because the privatized the prison guard union, which had a vested interest in keeping the number of prisoners up, basically ran a campaign and had it voted down. So all of a sudden, when you have financial interests in any kind of venue, it's going to create situations that go against the public interest. And you just got to watch out for that in all shapes and forms.
Yeah, we're not complete communists here. I mean, we do run a business. But I don't want certain aspects to be run as businesses. And that's just because I'm a citizen and I pay taxes. And I pay taxes in order to avoid my services being private. Because, I mean, look, I have enough trouble finding, most businesses to fulfill my needs. I don't need to have that same trouble for basic services. Okay, let's talk about religion.
I like religion. I mean, I like talking about religion. I don't particularly. Actually, truth be told, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I went to church while I was down in the South.
Yes, I know. Your mother told me. Yeah. I think. Why did you go? By the way, did she force you to go?
No. It was a Father's Day because the thing is, the church down there is called St. Albans Church, and St. Alban is actually who was originally what Father's Day was called before it was co-opted and turned into something a bit more family-friendly.
Oh, shut up! So you went to the fucking birthplace of Father's Day?
Well, it wasn't the birthplace, but yeah, I went to a St. Albans Day celebration at St. Albans Church, and it was an outdoor ceremony that I basically ignored. I was writing down ideas for the MMA book that I've been working on. Just ignored the entire sermon, and then had hot dogs and hamburgers and chatted with some really interesting people. This is the whole thing that I always want to kind of keep out there is I like a lot of religious people. They're great. I mean, and this church, whenever we talk about religion being dangerous, I can understand why there's a lot of resistance, because you go to one of these church ceremonies at a small church that isn't like a mega freak out church, and you're like, these people are harmless. and they are.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what it reminds me of? It just reminds me of, you ever seen these groups that, I don't know, they organize lawn bowling tournaments and that kind of stuff? I mean, look at them. They're people in their senior year that just want to meet other people that believe in what they do, and they just want to hang out and chill out. If that was what religion was, you think I'd have a problem with it? No! I'm like, go hang out with your friends. Talk about the things that you believe in. I don't care that it's wrong. I mean, I definitely think it's silly. But when you try to bring that group outside of your, sort of like sanctified little area, no, it don't fly. It don't fly with me, dog. But
yeah, no, I can agree
otherwise,
with you
I agree. I mean, these are, except for Roman Catholic churches, the other Presbyterian churches are a lot more friendly.
Well, you got to understand. I mean, driving around the South, there are more there are more churches than bars. I'm talking about the ratio is probably like 5 to 1. And a lot of these churches are gigantic Baptist mammoths. It's like
a mammoth.
They're immense. They have compounds, like 7 big buildings. These places. There was one that looked like a university. Man, it was just huge, and it just kept going and going.
See, these things freak me out, because then anytime there's anything that's really big, you're like, there's a lot of money here. What's going on here? That's not cool. Like, I can understand sort of like, guys got a church, accepts donations or whatever from the people within the locale, whatever. I mean, everybody's got their shamans. People used to give shamans all kinds of things. I don't think it was a good idea, because most of those shamans look like they're schizo, but whatever. We dig that shit. It's like performance art. That's what I view it. So you go over. Maybe it's not that entertaining, but I bet back in the day, I mean, when you don't have TV or anything, it probably was entertaining. I mean, you go to these places and they're telling you stories about places getting burned down and shit like that. They're like, cool, man, let's go watch a movie. Let's go to the church.
Well, the interesting thing was one of the big narratives that everybody was pushing while I was down there was marriage and divorce, and work to save your marriage and come to us and we can help, and it's free family counseling and this and that. And at first I was thinking I was saying, that's a really nice option. But then in the end, I was realizing the big problem is these people will never tell you that the marriage is over and that you should stop.
No, they'll tell you exactly the opposite. That's the problem, and their vested interest is to make sure that your marriage is maintained.
And to a degree,
and they should not have a vested interest. Their vested interest should be in your well-being, not your marriage.
And to a degree, I mean, there's a lot of this is a big criticism of, say, a lot of psychiatrists, and I have actually experienced this myself, where a significant other has gone to a psychiatrist who has basically pinned all of her problems on me, because when you're pissed off about a person, you're going to talk shit about them.
Well, they don't have any perspective.
Yeah,
and you know what? Unless the other person's in the room, I'm pretty sure that the psychologist should probably not be asking about biased stories and opinions on this person. But you know what? Usually if you go to a psychiatrist and you're talking shit about a person, they probably tell you to break up with them, because why are you going to talk shit about the person you're with? Break up with them.
You gotta understand, there are narratives that people get in their heads. People trick themselves into basically becoming sick of somebody else. You know what I mean? And that's why sometimes you say that a break is good. This is actually what I enjoyed about going off. For the week and a half. We did take a break. I mean, to a good degree, by the end, we were annoying the shit out of each other.
Truth be told, I mean, you were the one that was more annoyed. I was just trying to avoid the crap out of you. Because, you're a moody bitch. I'm otherwise cool. I'm cool and calm.
Yeah, basically all your kooky shenanigans were starting to piss me off. And I'm like, I need a break. I need a rehash. And it worked out great. We're all back, and we're all happy, and we're ready for hours of podcast goodness.
Yeah. You for that one show that everybody missed that I just tried to pull out of the fire but could not do, and everybody was suggesting. I got a couple of emails. Why don't you do one with just yourself? And no, I mean, I can do them once in a while if I feel inspired to. But remember, I don't want to talk to myself for half an hour. That is the height of insanity.
Well, that's another interesting thing that's been going on, is that we got pretty deep into this radio show thing. We do a good 4 radio shows a week, and by the end, you'd be talking in radio mode all the time. It's like you wouldn't stop.
It's Radio Jake. Welcome to Radio Life with Radio Jake.
Radio.
I don't. You know what I don't understand? I had a fan of the podcast say that I sounded like Alan Alda.
Alan Alda.
He's the guy that talks like this. It's like, that's Alan Alda. Like, he's got this weird thing, it's a bald guy, and he talks really weird. He was the psychiatrist in Grosse Point Blank.
I never saw Grosse Point Blank.
All right, well, if you knew who he was, you'd say it's not bad.
Okay.
Anyways, I don't sound like him. So, no, I don't sound like him. Don't say that. Don't spread that on Twitter. I'm not going to get a good reputation. And all you fans out there, you guys got to start talking about it on Twitter. Because I've noticed that now the site's getting more popular, but people aren't listening to the radio show. Does that make sense to you fans? Does that make any sense?
It's pretty backwards.
It doesn't make any sense?
It's like 2 tribes.
Exactly. We're trying to merge these things, but writing and speaking, they can be different. One thing I wanted to talk about is an article I wrote just yesterday, and it was about... I got this from a few fans, actually. This is what I like. If you guys want to send me emails... And my email is jacobforte@gmail.com. You can send me all your emails of things that you find interesting. Articles that you want me to write or comment on, I'll probably do it. Like, just send me things. I would love to not have to do anything but check my email to write about stuff that you guys want to hear. That's what I do. I entertain you guys. So give me topics, and I'll be more than happy.
Yeah, or ask questions about, or give us arguments that, one of the new things that you've been doing is that whole debunking Christian arguments, right? Or... And I actually thought that was probably some of your best stuff.
Well, it's kind of my whole effort is just anytime a person has a claim. My next one I'm going to be writing about actually is that whole that technique they have of saying, well, Jesus loves you, but here's how I think that you're a shit. It's one of their tactics that I wanted to talk about. It's not a claim, but it is a tactic, so I wanted to kind of squeeze it in there because I do think it's a little bit hilarious. But here's the thing about podcasting and how Good Atheist is trying to move forward and that kind of stuff. I want you guys to participate more. If you guys like the show and everything else like that, and you're connected to the internet, talk to us through Twitter accounts, through the website, through email. I mean, we're more than happy to interact with you guys. You provide us great content and stuff to talk about, and that's what we need.
If you guys see a picture of Jesus with Wolverine claws, email that to us. Just send us a link. You don't have to give us 7 or 8 paragraphs. Or if you're on Twitter, just right now go onto Twitter and say, I like www.thegoodatheist.net. Listen to the podcast.
Listen to the podcast now. And you know what? You would be surprised about how much that actually means. That's how we've been surviving. I mean, the reason that the show is a success and the reason why, we're getting close to 200,000 listens. It's a lot of listens, man. And all of that through word of mouth. So don't underestimate your word of mouth. I know you guys probably talk about it with your friends, but hey, it's not the only place to do it. And if you guys want to talk to us and send us emails, please do it. Anyways, the thing
Do
I wanted to talk about was an article in BBC News that was talking about how some doctors and nurses were complaining that they aren't allowed to pray or offer to pray to patients. And they're saying, their spiritual welfare is being neglected and so on and so forth. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of put out there, and this is because I have written on the National Health Service before for some reason. I mean, you guys seem to have problems with religion all the time. And one of the problems that I had written before is that the National Health Service pays for chaplains to be on call for people who have spiritual needs. And my whole issue of what I wrote about was the fact that you could hire about 1,500 nurses for the amount of money that they were spending on chaplains to go around praying at people. But you know what? Now listening to this story, I'm like, maybe that's not a bad thing. If you really want to have your religion part, it's there, okay?
Yeah,
if somebody who wants it, they can have it.
Because here's the thing about hospitals, and I learned this from Scrubs, by the way, so it ain't all shit.
Oh, no.
Is that a lot of people who come into the hospital aren't leaving except on a gurney, and that's just the way it is. So what do you do when you can't treat them?
Yeah, and you know what? To some degree, I will not deny that, certain individuals will probably... their health would probably improve if there was at least some spiritual component to it. I mean, think about the placebo effect and that kind of stuff.
But stop even thinking about it. Your health's going to improve.
All right,
As I said, these people
they
are
need
dying.
last rites.
These people are dying, and they are dying slowly, and they are dying painfully. Now, for the most part, I would generally say...
keep your religion out of my hospital.
Well, ignore that whole God in the sky, everything will be better, this and that. But when you're dying and you got nothing much else, if you want to turn to that God thing, I have no problem with that.
No problem.
That's one of those incidences where I'm all good. You can sell whatever New Age. We're all energy. This, that.
Absolutely. Anything whatever you need, buddy. Whatever you need.
Whatever you need to allow yourself to open up spiritually to those around you and really get everything off your chest and get to peace with yourself.
Yep. For that, I have no problem. So it's like I am retracting at least part of what I had said about those chaplains is saying, you know what, it is a part of the health service, and there's no denying that how a person feels. Like they may have some crazy beliefs. Maybe there should even, I know this will sound crazy, maybe they should even be a part of that fund, not just to chaplains, but other new age bullshit artists. At least the ones on call, because people have weird beliefs. And whatever they got to do, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is deny anyone on there that's either dying or sick of something that is not really that big of a deal. I mean, even though you could say, all right, well, they pay quite a bit of money for this. You're like, yeah, but I mean, split among the population, it's a small amount. That just goes to kind of easing the pain.
Yeah, when we talk about 1,500 nurses, it's a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're talking about how many nurses there are, say, in England, in the UK, it's a large number.
Yeah, that and the fact that you're asking that your hospital be free of religion. This is why the whole doctors wanting to pray, you can't. Okay, just get over it. And you can't wear crosses, not just because it's a religious thing, but it's a sanitary thing. Okay, you want a cross full of metal and bacteria and stuff like that, falling and rubbing on wounds? No, I don't think you do. I mean, no jewelry. It's not hard. You can get over that. But I can accept the fact that, to some degree, people are going to have these needs, whether we like it or not. And I don't want to be a dick about this one issue. All right? There's plenty for me to complain about. That ain't one. All right? That's like, I'm fine with it. But just the reason I'm against the doctors and the nurses praying is that because I think that a lot of people would probably feel very uncomfortable and allow them to do so, because you'll find that individuals are very polite. And if you ask them, can I pray for you, that kind of stuff, you might feel like your health, your treatment may suffer if you say no. Because we know what it's like sometimes to say no to religious people, don't we? They don't become the best of neighbors when they find out you don't believe in God. They tend to treat you like shit.
Or they try to save you.
Well, yeah, they'll try to save you, but once they fucking find out that you are not turning, yeah, they treat you like shit. And I'm sure that most of you that are listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's the whole thing. I'm like, let's not bring religion in on the doctor level. Like, we separate that. You are an officer. You work for the government. Therefore, keep your fucking religion to yourself. It's that simple. And it's all good. We're good, dog. Keep it to yourself. I'm like, if they have spiritual concerns, they have family members. And if they don't, chaplains. They have chaplains. Everyone's good. The only ones that are complaining is you, because somehow it's probably in your mind you're justifying it as you really want to proselytize, you know? And you figure, hell, the church is the best place to save souls, right?
The funny thing about it is I'm hoping people aren't expecting that this is something that's going to keep, a nurse from talking about or a doctor from talking about religion if, say, a patient brings it up. This is something that I imagine happens on a regular basis and no one really gives a shit about unless it is a problem. And that's why this kind of thing is being brought up, is because there have been problems with doctors that have gone too far.
Yeah,
and that's why you need a rule so that when people go too far, you can go to the rule book.
Yeah, if the rule book says that if you start talking about religion, then we're like, let us arrange a chaplain for you, and he'll be more than happy to discuss this subject with you. Ta-da! Problem solved. So, yeah, nurses and doctors, shut the hell up. Okay, do us a favor.
So this is interesting. Actually, you want to go on to something else that people shouldn't be allowed to do. What you were talking about with, you were saying that the burqa should not be allowed.
Yes. Well, this was the other topic I talked on last radio show. So unfortunately, to hear this one, you will need to pay. But since you've already paid and are listening to it, no problemo. Yeah, the bonus guys get more. That's what you bonus people get. More. So on the subject of more about the burqa, I know that a lot of people responded that they felt that I was not right and a fascist when it came to the burqa. And I know you feel some way that yourself that way. So that's why we're going to start with you.
I am the champion for you people. I'm going up there. I am your David going up against this Goliath.
All right, David. Let's hear it.
Okay,
what's your argument?
Number one, didn't you say something about, hey, they banned Sharia law, so it's pretty much the same thing?
No, well, I was giving that as an example.
Yeah, because it's wrong. Because they didn't ban Sharia law. They basically said, we have our laws in place, and you're not allowed to make new laws. That's basically
Well, no, they said that you can't have laws that conflict with our laws. So
yeah,
it essentially is. I mean, you're putting a rule down. Sure, you can call it Sharia law, but it ain't Sharia law. It's the new law. It's the law. It's like Sharia light. It's the fucking Diet Coke of laws. All right? That is a compromise. What I'm saying is the burqa is not a compromise in any degree. It isolates and separates women from society. It is meant entirely for that. And sure, there are women that, will wear it and they'll fully support it. But like I mentioned last podcast, the majority of people that perform female circumcision are women. All right? And female circumcision is illegal, but it doesn't stop the fact that it is culturally passed on by other women.
Well, what was it in feminism? Wasn't there this whole thing where basically at one point in the 60s and 70s, if you were, say, a stay-at-home mom and stuff like that, there were a group of feminists who would basically call you a breeder. And they were like, they had no regard for you whatsoever. And is there kind of
is there a parallel?
Well, is there a parallel between that where you have Muslim people who are basically saying, well, these women who want to keep the burqa around and stuff like that, these women are holding us back? Because that's kind of like what you're making it sound like, is that these women are holding back all Muslim women.
Okay, but let's look at your example. Actually, I'll use your example as a counter argument. And the fact of the matter is, when in any movement, of course, you're going to have exaggerations. You could say, well, we need to ban the Bible, which would be a better example of banning homemaking, because obviously women that stay at home and take care of children, that's a long-ass tradition, all right? And to ask for it, I mean, obviously there's going to be some people that say, this is the particular problem why women aren't integrating, therefore we need to do something against it. And they're not necessarily wrong in it, but it's not like it's something that you can ban. And it's not also as though homemaking, the women that are homemakers are forced to because of their culture. I mean, there may be some that feel obliged to, but the honest truth is that we do live in a society where if you really want to, you can leave and face no consequences or dangers in doing so.
This is pretty much what we're talking about with
the burqa. See, I would love to believe that, but you have to look at the segment of the population that enforces burqa wearing. Now, this is the same group of people that every year in Germany, I think that there are 500 or something like along those lines. No, not 500. Sorry, 50 deaths that are like honor killings. Right? Honor killings are on the rise. And it's because, say, a woman is not obeying particular laws or rules. So what that means is that whenever the laws or rules are being enforced by the culture within that society, they will inflict whatever punishment that they see fit once those rules are broken.
Yeah, but I'm kind of wondering, we talk about honor killings and stuff like that, and once again, you dress it up, and for the most part, these people justify it using their religion, but if they were just rednecks from fucking Iowa or wherever else, they'd probably beat their wives to death anyways for just some other stupid reason.
No, well, okay, look, you have to separate from your mind this idea that an honor killing and a husband beating his wife to death are the same thing. They are not the same thing. They look the same to you because you're like, the consequences is the same. But in all honesty, honor killings is it's part of a tradition of blood libel. Nobody kills their wife to restore honor if they're a redneck. But the idea is that women's blood is a way of atoning and letting other people in your society know what's happened, saying like, okay, my family has honor again because we show that we had stones. We killed our own daughter. And if you look at that, you're like, well, honor killings, they can't happen in our society and our culture. That's no good. And you obviously understand why. Apart from the fact that it's murdering another human being, is like, this is segregating and, abusing a portion of society. Women, all women, and that's who you're punishing. Now, look, I know, and I am conflicted myself about the burqa issue. Trust me, there's nothing more conflicting than I think. This is why primarily I want a dialogue about it, because I think that once we dialogue about it, everything that I'm talking about will become apparent. Number one, that the burqa is not a Muslim tradition. It is a tradition that comes right out of Saudi Arabia. Some very obscure hadiths can claim that the burqa is justified, but again, the majority of Muslims, like 99.99% of them, do not wear burqas. And it's just because of what burqas do in society. Like, you cannot, like, the roles are immediately set. And once that happens, once you're part of a culture that enforces burqas, try fucking leaving it. Good luck trying to. Good luck even saying that you don't want to wear it. It isn't a choice. And we cannot enforce choice. Therefore, the only solution is to remove elements which, contradict to them.
But here's the deal. I would agree with you, say, if you said in Saudi Arabia, ban the burqa, because what would happen to a woman who doesn't wear a burqa out there is that you'll have people on the street actively, basically accosting them. But say in France, which is, I believe, where they've been talking about banning that kind of stuff.
That's where I want to ban. I don't want to ban it in Saudi Arabia.
I know, but this is my point. Doing it in France, they don't need the same kind of protections. Honestly, if you try and do that, you're basically setting up a fight that I don't think you can win.
I believe that a large portion of the Muslim population would stand behind it. Actually, the reason I know this is because everything that I've been reading concerning the banning of the burqa has come from the Muslim segment of population. They agree. Many of them agree because, and many of them are Muslim women that agree. They know what it represents. We don't know. We're not part of that culture, and we don't understand its power. They do. They understand it far more than we do, and I agree with them. I'm like, this is a problem. This is not one of those things where you're like, education will help, because women who wear burqas typically are not educated. And they're part of a society that says we don't want women to be integrated in with the rest of that society. We can't have that. We require the participation of everyone. Like I said, we're in a weird position where we're trying to enforce choice. How do you do this? Like, a person can say, well, I choose to do this. No, you didn't. You were forced to. But if you say that you are forced to, you will be bruised, beaten, and what have you. I'm like, you're stuck in a weird position. And you know what? All of this really mental struggle that we're having over a fucking piece of clothing, it's enough. All right? It's enough. Get rid of it. We have more important things to discuss, and this is an issue where really the morality of it, like, what is the morality of banning a piece of clothing? Not much. You think it's a slippery slope? I think that you're just using that as a counter-argument, and it's a weak one. You're saying, what, we ban this, we'll ban another thing? Give me a break.
I don't
Give
look
me
at it,
a break.
I don't look at it as a slippery slope. I look at it as a war cry. I look at it as basically as And I guess it's a little bit of a tricky thing because there was that book we read that basically said that don't placate these kinds of people. You have to sound the horns, and you have to say you have to bring it up, and you have to make decisions. But personally, to me, I think it's an issue that if we just continue along the path that we are continuing on now, in about 10 years, it's not going to be an issue in Europe, or it's going to be a gigantic issue, and then we can ban it.
I think that it's going to be a gigantic issue, and it's not going away. Look, I hate to say it, people, but we're making more and more concessions for religion, and it's getting ridiculous. It's really getting ridiculous, especially, like, okay, take for instance the fact that previous issues which have required compromise. Let's say this one Sikh. I remember in England there was like a big fuss because there was a Sikh who wanted to have a policy change in sort of like the uniform. And the huge issue with that is that obviously it was also for safety reasons. And they won't admit this, but there is an alternative kind of turban that they can wear that allows them to wear hats and so on and so forth. So there is a compromise either side, but now it was sort of like framed as though this is because of religious intolerance and so on and so forth. And you're like, there are issues of safety, there are issues of social integration, all these other kind of things that we take into account in this society. We realize that once people become segregated, that's a giant danger to society. We need individuals to adapt and to be part of our culture.
But this is what I'm saying. There was a compromise that could have been reached, and then you put the burden on them to basically say, no, we don't want to be reasonable. Personally, to me, I don't know whether or not there's a more reasonable answer out there than ban it or don't, but I would like to say that we haven't looked into other options enough yet before saying ban.
I also think the other options are people are going to take it privately into their own hands, and I don't think we want to see that.
I think the other big problem with banning the burqa is that you're basically arguing a point that a whole bunch of racist motherfuckers are arguing, and that always makes it a very difficult thing to defend.
Well, they're going to frame it in that way, and honestly, I'm like, don't listen to them because they're going to frame it in horrible ways, and I don't want them on my team.
But this is the whole problem, is that I honestly think that a lot of the French people that are backing and behind it, and even in the government, it is because they are xenophobic racists. And that's basically
there's probably a large segment of that as well. I'm not going to deny it. But just because they are present there, it's kind of like this. Just because there's a segment of the Orthodox Jewish population that agrees that Israel should be wiped off the map, does not mean that is a wise opinion for any group to have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but these aren't the people that are introducing bills and affecting policy. You know what I mean?
What are you talking about? Like, you don't think that individuals can be, influential politically, at least? Like, obviously they can be. Look, all I want to argue at the end of the day is that I want people to start dialoguing about it. Like I said, I think that we're going to find out some very interesting things. And number one is going to be, what is the history of the burqa? What does it represent? What is its impact on society? And these are things that everybody should be aware of, not just the hardcore racists and the intellectuals that are arguing, yes, get rid of this, because those are the two segments that are talking about it. So everyone's going to say, well, this is just a racist action. No, that there are real societal consequences to the burqa that we want to avoid at all costs, all right? This is one of those things. The burqa is one of those things that it's no good, all right? It is no good. We have to get rid of it. That's what my opinion is.
I think we both got our points out there. I don't know if I won or not, but I guess we'll let people listen.
Well, the beauty is that since you disagree and I agree, and we're a duo, we hold both positions simultaneously.
Excellent.
And therefore, everyone can enjoy that. What is TGA's opinion on the burqa ban? Yes and no. Yes and no. So that's good.
Yeah, that works out pretty well.
All right, with that, we're going to catch everybody on Friday for the regular podcast.